welcome back to the channel. Part 4 now already of this C-141 build, and as you can see we're pressing forward. All the fuselage is all sanded now, and I've put some extra glue in where I thought there might be some thin spots or whatever, so it's all coming together very nicely. If you remember, at the end of part 3 I told you about this awful design here where they've got one side shorter than the other. So what I've done here, I've actually got some masking tape and then just drawn a line on it so it looks like it's pretty symmetrical, and then I'm just going to put some filler in there and sand it down. Actually, before I do that, I will just check it's not supposed to be like that, but I'm 99% sure it's not. And you may be able to see I've got a ridge down the middle of here. All I've done, I've got a bottle of super glue here, which is a normal sort of thickness, just a regular, and put a bead of that down the middle, and I've just quickly gone over it with a sanding stick just to blend it in. Basically I've done that so that I haven't got a seam in the middle, because it's a fairly flexible area here. If you are building this kit, I would recommend adding something in behind here to sort of box it up a bit, and I don't want the filler to crack if it's pressed in the middle, so I put super glue there. That bridges that gap and it sort of stops it from becoming a single area of distortion, so that it won't crack the filler. So there's all sorts of fillers we can use for this. We've got our good old Mr. White Putty, which is a great filler. We've got a trusty old Tamiya, which is another great filler. The only trouble with these two, they take quite a while to dry. We've got these plastic putties. You've also got deluxe plastic putty and everything. Beauty of these is, like it says here, water cleanup. So basically, you've seen me use Mr. Surfacer, I expect, where I paint it into an area and then come along after with some alcohol on a cotton swab and rub the excess away, and it just leaves the Mr. Surfacer in the seam. It's great if you've got a seam where there's actually a panel line, and it will kind of recreate that panel line look. This stuff, you do the same thing but with water. So because it's water based, it doesn't actually bite. You put it on here, it'll set, but then you just be able to just flick it off or scratch it off with your nail. It doesn't bite at all. The other option here is something I sometimes use, car body filler. I've got a small Tamiya pot here, and then there's a hardener for it. I find this stuff doesn't really bite into the plastic very well either, but I may well use it for finishing, because sometimes the finish on this stuff isn't so good. So I think for this, what I'm going to do is initially use some of this Mr. Hobby, the Guns Mr. White Putty, and I'm just going to put a line of it down the centre here, like so, and I'll add some more there. And then I can use my little spreader tool just to spread it out. And the thing to do here is not try and do it all at once. Try and put on sort of 2 or 3 thin layers rather than one thick, because what will actually happen is it dries from the outside in, and you will find that with your thick layer on there, what you will find is it won't dry properly underneath, so, or it'll take forever to dry. So it's better to build it up, just like painting, build it up in thin layers, let them dry, and then add another one on top if you need to. You can see it's starting to tear, it's starting to dry already. So yeah, that's the beauty of putting it in thin layers. Okay, there we go. So that's our initial application gone down there. And the masking tape stops us getting any filler on areas where we don't want it. Okay, we can see that's starting to dry already. So I'll let that go off. Grab myself a cloth and just wipe the tool away. I may as well, because this is all just bulged out of the tube, put the top back on the tube to stop that happening again. And I may as well just lay that out there. As I say, put it on thin. I'm just going to lay that out like that. There we go. Okay, so we'll let that dry and then we'll sand it down. And remember, like I said, I'm not going to be using my new Infinity sanders on filler because it'll just clog them up. So there we go. See you in a minute. Right, so that filler's starting to dry off now. So once that's gone off, I'll put another coat on top of it. These seams on the fuselage, we can still see some little bit of witness there, and there's a couple of sink marks here, there's a couple of sink marks there. We've got some work needs going on the back here. We've got some seams. In fact, I need to put some extra thin in there because we've got a white line, so that will just capillary into there just in case there is a dry joint. That's that sorted. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a product called Mr. Surfacer. Again, this is available from premiumhobbies.co.uk. Antics sell it. Most hobby shops sell it these days. It used to be quite hard to get hold of in this country. But yeah, if you're going to get some of these Infinity sanding sticks, you may as well add a bottle of this to your order. It's brilliant. You can get 500, 1000, 1200 and 1500. Now, if you're only going to buy one bottle, it's not very cheap. I think it's about £6. Go for the 1000. Reason being, if you want it a bit thinner, you can thin it down with some Mr. kind of leveling thinners. If you want it a bit thicker, you can just shake it so you've got some on the lid, like so. And then if I take the top off, I can show you that. The other thing I never do, I never bother cleaning the brush, because as soon as you put the brush in it, it dissolves what was on there before and the brush becomes soft and pliable again. But we can see here, this is quite thin. Okay, so this is like the normal consistency. I'll leave that there for 10 minutes while I'm doing this, and I'll show you what happens. So I'm just going to brush some over the seams. I'm going to brush a little bit in there as well, and in there. This is just your little extra bit of guarantee that, you know, any tiny imperfections, any line that's showing will be hidden. And it's also worth remembering that with any seam like this, if you have used a lot of glue, or you've used some hot fillers, or even this stuff, Mr. Surfacer, I would recommend leaving it at least a week before you paint it, because what will often happen is, especially if you've used a lot of glue, is you will get some shrinkage in that join. And what you'll do is you'll paint your model, and it might be the best paint job you've ever done, best camouflage, whatever, and all of a sudden one day you look at it and you'll see a dirty great seam line down the middle, and in this case you'll see seam lines across the wings. So it's best to I'm going to put some in there to fill those little sink marks up. Yeah, so it's best to leave it for, you know, if you can, leave it for at least a week, just to really go off. Just so that all the solvents come out of the glue. I'm sorry if you can hear a dog barking in the background. It's my neighbour's dog, and it just barks its head off at anything. And it doesn't bother me at all, but it might be annoying for you in the video. So just brushing this on. As you can see, you don't need to be particularly careful with it. You just brush it on, and because these seam lines these panel lines don't match up anyway, I'm not going to worry about them too much. In fact, what I'm going to do here is fill that one in there, and then I'll rescribe that. Yeah, you can see this one here is it doesn't line up either, so we'll go down here and just do that. I think that's a little skid plate on the back there. So we'll just brush some in down here, and there we go. And that's that done. That's your fuselage joint taken care of. There's also a bit of shrinkage there, so I'm just going to take good care of that there. And there's also some there. So there we go. And I'm also going to put some around this landing gear bay. Maybe improve the looks there a bit. It is actually a very basic bay. There's no detail in there at all. As I say, you can get the metallic detail set, and that gives you detail for the landing gear bays, which is nice. It's also very reasonably priced. If I build another one of these, I will definitely do that, and I want to get the nice cockpit set if I do another one as well. So there we go. So that's that all dealt with. The The other thing we can do now is go in here. Remember where we glued these undercarriage bays in? And then what I'll do here, I'll remove this with the cotton bud method I talked about earlier, or in part 3 I think it was. And what this stuff is really good for is just giving you a seamless look. And when I go in there with the cotton bud and remove it, it won't be like sanding down a fuselage joint and having it absolutely smooth. But what it will do is just get rid of the gaps, if you like. Okay, and you could also in there, you could use that plastic putty if you wanted to. I tend not to use it for fear that it's going to fall out because it doesn't bite at all. And I'm just going to put some more over these panel lines because they're shrinking back already. There we go. And the same here. A bit more in there. And just to make sure it'll drop on those sink marks. And I'll show you what's happened here. You can see, you see how this is thickened up? So that's thickened up from what it was. And on the edges it's even drying out. So if you want something thick, just shake your bottle and then leave it on the side for 5 minutes and you've got something thicker. So like if I wanted to put something thicker over these panel lines to make sure it doesn't shrink back, then I've got that to do it with. Okay, but remember, the thicker it is, the longer it'll take to dry. And there we go. So I'm happy with that, how that's come out. And as I say, it's just a guarantee just to hide any imperfections and get us a nice seamless joint down there. Right, so I'll let that go off now and then I'll be back. Right, so while the Mr. Surfacer and everything is drying, got it over here just sitting drying out, Mr. Surfacer and filler drying out, we'll look at something else. And I've decided I'm going to look at the engines. So we've got the 4 sprues here with the engines on. So I've got a bit of a mess going on over here. I'm going to take my Tamiya cutters and remove the parts that I need for one engine. And then we've got the fan at the front. They're a little unusual, these engines, in that they've got what looks like a stator at the front. A stator is basically a ring of fans which doesn't rotate. So yeah, if you look at the Metallic Details aftermarket set, it's they actually supply them in photo etched brass, and it's almost like a wheel of blades that's just sat there stationary in front, which to me seems like a pretty good idea actually, because it probably acts like almost like a semi-fod guard. So we've got a bit of a flash on the back of here, so I'm going to take my 1000 sponge and just go around that and see what it does with it. There we go, it cleans that up lovely. So nice Infini 1000 soft sponge. Let's clean that up beautiful. And then another little tip for you newer guys, get your Tamiya extra thin after you've been sanding and just paint it over the plastic, and it removes the sanded hairy kind of finish, if you like. Alright, so that's that done. Now I'm just going to clean these sprue nibs off of here a bit, and I'm going to take my 400 grit stick and just run over that sprue nib until it's disappeared. And right now I'm uploading the video about customer service, and it's a bit of a rant. You'll probably have a bit of a laugh, but it's something worth watching. If you haven't seen it, go and have a look. It's my last video before this one, and it's just called A Rant. And it's all about customer service. There's the 600. Let's just use the 600 on there. we can go around there with the soft sponge, remove the witness, and there we are. And then these seams here I'm not going to worry about cleaning up, because the screw nib, should I say, sorry, not seams, because we've got seams there to do afterwards. So there we go. And I'm just going to make sure the mating faces are flat. And yeah, these engines could really do with some extra detail, because the front face, it does look a bit sort of a bit plain, if you like. There we go. It does look a bit plain, but you know, with some different coloured paints and some washes, we may be able to do something nice with it. So the rear end there is nice and thin. These are the same sort of reverse thrusters as a Olympus RB199 has got in a Tornado, where they've got those doors that come out and they direct the thrust forwards. If you get the metallic details engine set for this, you actually get those as separate, so you can display them in the open position, which is a very nice touch. I'm really impressed by their products, actually. So what this is saying here, we need to put that in there. Now it says we should paint that first. I'm not really going to worry about that. Or am I? Because I'm not going to get any paint down in there. Let's see what it's like. I'm not going to worry about painting that first. We can get in there afterwards with some, or maybe I will. Nah. So basically we've got that together now. So all I'm going to do is take some of my extra thin and run it down that seam, and I don't know if you saw it there on the camera, the capillary action pulled it straight away down that join, just like so. And then we can put some on the inside of here, and then not getting anything on the brush, can run it down here. Just like that. And there we go. That's that glued together. And then we can, using our 400 grit stick, sand the front to give us a nice flat face. And then fit our engine on with the front of the pylon lined up like so. And that fits on there lovely. Now I think what I might do is not glue it on yet until I've dealt with this seam, because I don't want to end up putting a flat spot on that front. So I'm going to go on and get the other three all glued together, and then I'll be back with you. Okay, the engines are all together now, and glue's all dried and everything, so we can start working on these, getting rid of these little sprue nibs down here. Be careful, there's a little raised plastic part on here which I'm sure is supposed to be there, because all of the engines have got it. So all I'm doing here is just using the sanding stick just to get rid of the sprue nibs, really. That's what I'm trying to achieve, and level things out. And then I'm going to come in with my 600 sponge and just smooth that out to get a nice seamless finish on it. And when we rescribe the bottom of the engines, they'll look superb. And then on the fronts, on the pylons, I'm not going to use the hard stick at all. I'm just going to go straight in with the soft. And then again, we've got some scribing to do on there. So again, on here we can just go over with the 600. As you can see, the fit of these pylons together has been extremely nice. There we go, and then I'm going to come in with the 2500 and just smooth it out and make sure there's no witness with any lines or anything. And you can see here what I mean when I say this Roden plastic is lovely to work with. On a side note, guys, I have actually, you've probably noticed, I have actually taken down my rant video. Reason being, I haven't explained myself, and I think I've misled people. The whole purpose of that video was not to say anything derogatory about Roden at all. That was not the objective of the video. The objective was to just basically warn you all, if you're in the UK, of the absolute rigmarole you're going to have to go through if you need replacement parts through Pocket Bond. Now, I have emailed Roden directly because I'm afraid I'm not going to be bothered by you know, putting my parts in a bloody bag and going to the post office and posting them off recorded delivery. I mean, for Christ's sake, it's the sprue is probably worth about 3p, and it's not like I've lost the parts, damaged them or broken them. You know, we've got a live video here on YouTube showing me getting the parts out of the bags, and we've got that black spot in the plastic. So it's not something I've done. I don't think it's my fault. I don't think I should have to do anything out of the ordinary to get a replacement part, really. So I've emailed Roden, and let's see what they come back with. I'll bet they just come back with and say, yeah, can we have your address please, and we'll send you another sprue. It's a current kit, so that's not an issue. Other people have suggested I go back to Antics and get it replaced. Well, I know they don't have another one, so that means taking it back to Antics, and then they'll either wait for the Pocket Bond or Backman, whoever they are, to sort things out. And in the meantime, I still don't have a kit, so you know, it's not a big issue. It doesn't happen very often. I do buy a lot of kits, and it's not very often I get a problem. But when I do get a problem, I don't expect it to, you know, expect to have to do anything. If you go to McDonald's and you buy a burger and the burger's cold, you take it back and you say this burger's cold. They don't ask you to eat it, to test it out first, just to prove that it is actually cold. You know, so but also in comparison, the reason I put my video up, I thought was a good way of getting across the absolutely fantastic customer service that Revell give us. It's unbelievable, really good. So there we go. So that's those engines all sanded out now, and now you're clear why that video has been taken down, because people have, well, not people have taken it, I've obviously come across as I'm knocking Roden, and I'm not. I'm not saying Roden are perfect. You heard me have a rant in the C5 Galaxy review where I talked about the damaged wings, and the damaged wings in this kit as well. You know, it's basically their packaging is awful. Chucking the parts in a plastic bag and chucking them in a box. You know, some of these manufacturers need to look at the likes of Hobby Boss and Trumpeter and see how they pack their kits, or AMK, you know, avant-garde model kits. They, you know, everything is all boxed and protected, and you could chuck that kit down the stairs and it wouldn't get damaged. So it's one of the reasons I didn't buy this kit on Amazon, because if you go on Amazon UK, you can get the Galaxy for £105, and it comes from the USA. Well, can you imagine if they just put it in a box, you know, with the paper around it like Amazon normally do? By the time it gets here, all the corners of those wings would be completely gone. So anyway, there we are. That's the engines cleaned up. That's those, job done. And I'm going to just brush some Mr. Surfacer on them, I think, just to make sure, and then we'll go from there. Okay then guys, this is almost real time what's going on here. I mean, I took the dog out for a walk, and so the engines were left for about an hour to dry before I sanded them down, which I did just now in the previous segment. Looking through the instructions now, looking forward, got the main gear legs here, and I was kind of looking, because I know the top of the gear leg sticks out through that hole in the undercarriage bay, this hole here, and that's where the ground crew can put air into the undercarriage to level the aircraft up and get it square on the ground. And I was looking, well, where's the location? And basically you've got this tiny little pin on here. Bearing in mind there's two of these on the same sprue, so they're not handed. You've got that tiny little pin on the side there, and that is actually all you get is a location, and I think this block here goes up on the back. So looking at the actual fuselage, you've got this little indentation here, so I think really what we need to do is look at putting something stronger in there. So I've measured up that pin, and that pin is roughly 1.2 millimeters or 1.3 millimeters, I think it was, in diameter. Yeah, 1.2. So I've got a piece of 1.2 brass rod here. Okay, so my objective now is to basically drill this out, drill both main gear legs out, drill through here, and then put a piece of brass rod right through the fuselage, and then the whole weight of the aircraft will be sat on the brass rod rather than on this tiny little plastic edge here, which is just going to break off, I think, as soon as you knock it. So what we need to do is first of all pick up the center of that pin. Easiest to do it on this side because it's slightly fatter. So I'm doing, I've got a sharp point, and all I do is I just make a mark, and then I look at it, and if that mark looks like it's in the center, then I'll just enlarge it, and if it looks like it's a bit off, you can just push it over and then pull up straight. Okay, so all I'm doing there is marking the center. Do the same on this one. Come along here, touch. Yep, that's up too high, so I'll bring the point back towards me and then come up vertical, and then what we can do is get the mark in the center. We need to be pretty accurate, because if you're off, the plane won't sit level. Now I've got these microbox drills. Little advice to anybody that's thinking about buying a set of these: if you see these on eBay or anywhere else, look at the writing on the box. This is my experience. If the writing is all black and capitals, all one size, and everything's black, I think you should be good to go. I think it's a good set of drills. Some of them have this writing on them in white, and then some of them have, like, they're all capitals, but the M and the B are bigger, taller letters, and those I found to be not so good. There's also, you see these here with the gold on them, absolutely useless. The difference is these are normally about £10, these are normally about £2, so you get what you pay for. That's the box to look for, like that, not the one with the white writing on it. So I'm going to take out what should we go for, 0.8 first of all, and put it up in my little pin vise here, and then I'm just going to simply drill through. It looks like it's in the style. It needs to come towards me a bit, it looks like. Yeah, so I'm just going to angle the drill towards me slightly, and this is why you use the smaller drill to start with, because it enables you to correct yourself. There we go. So now the hole is, and we need to make sure we're nice and square, and drill through. And check we've come out central on the other side, and we haven't, so what I'm going to do is just pull this hole over a bit. And there we go. Now when I go through the bigger drill, it should follow that hole, and we should find we're more central. And you can, with softer plastics, you can almost use a drill like a file and just push it in and out, and it will actually cut and pull the hole over for you. There we go. Do the same on this one. Just make a mark first of all. Yep, that looks like it's in the center. So I'm going to stay nice and square. Push through. There we go. And that one's come out pretty central as well. If anything, it just needs to go off to sort of 2 o'clock. So we just push that over to 2 o'clock, like so, like that. Okay, then we can put this drill away. Get a 1.2 drill. Just too big for that collet, but it's gone in, so that's fine. And then I'm gonna just come in with the 1.2 and go through like that, and it's a little bit off, but I'm not going to worry too much, because at the end of the day we're going to be super gluing it on, and we can use a little bit of play to get some super glue in there. There we go. Okay, so that's like that, and then that rod will fit in there like so. So that's that one, and then we'll do the same again on this one. Just drill through straight away, and that one is, yeah, that one's a lot more central. So the first one, that is what you call video building. As soon as the camera goes on, something goes wrong. You guarantee it every time. So there we go. You can see that one's drilled through there now. Okay, and I'm just gonna take my knife and just remove the little raised ridge that's left behind, because now the brass sticking through is going to be our sort of raised part, if you like. There we go. Do the same on this one. Just like so. There you are. We can see that we're off on this one, off one way. So what you can do as well with that is take your number 10A blade and just open it out slightly like that, and then you've got a pin there to slide it over and you can get your glue in there. Right, so now I've got the 1.2 drill set up in the chuck. Let's rip these wings off. This filler should be gone off by now, and then I'm going to drill in here, and I'm just going to eye this up and get it square. That's gone through straight away, so that's not too thick. That's gone through there, so now we should be able to slide this brass rod into there, and we should be able to get it to come out the other side with any luck. There we go. And now we can set this to length, slide our undercarriage legs over that, and now we've got a solid brass mounting for the aircraft to sit on. So if we measure the thickness of the undercarriage leg here, what I'll do, rather than taking it off the sprue, I'll just cut the sprue away there, and now I can get in here and I can measure the thickness of that if I turn the vernier up, the caliper on. So the thickness of that little area there is 2.2 millimeters. So that's going to be 4.4 plus 34.4 is going to be 38.8. So if we cut this to say 39 millimeters, then we know we'll be in the right ballpark. So, and what I'll do first of all actually is file the end of this flat, because we're going to need flat on both ends. There we go. So I'll use my knife to mark the length. So 30. There's 39.2. We could just use the knife pressing down on there to mark it. If it was tube, you could cut all the way through just like that, and then cut it off, and then again sand the end flat so we get a nice flat. So when it comes through the undercarriage leg, what you're going to see is it must have a burr on it. Just go through with the drill again. So what you're going to see is that. So it looks the same as it did with the plastic part, and you're just going to get the brass just poking through. So this should be 39 mil, 38.96. I think that'll do us. So then we can just put that in there when we're ready, slot that in there, get our undercarriage legs on, and we're good to go. Okay guys, you know how I keep going on and on and on about dry fitting and making sure parts fit before you get any glue out. Big example, if you're going to do this modification with the brass, you kind of be tempted to put the brass in, measure it up, get it in the centre and glue it in. But if you do that, then you can't get your undercarriage legs on. So what we need to do is actually push the brass through from one side, like that, get our undercarriage leg off, okay, or on, should you say. Now these little pads at the back, they sit in the back of the undercarriage bays. On my model, I'm having to sand some material off of them to get them to fit nicely, but I think that all is determined by the positioning of the when you glue the bay in. So we need to make sure that we get the undercarriage leg in position, okay, and then what we do is push the brass rod through from the other side into the leg, because you can't actually get the leg to go over the brass once it's in there. You haven't got enough movement to hook it in. So there we are, we've got that like that now. Now what we could do now is glue that in if you want to, but I'm not going to, because I want to paint the undercarriage bays and everything. So so basically what we'll probably do is get the undercarriage together and then slot that onto that brass and then glue them on once they're in position like this, because what you don't want to do is be gluing the legs in and having them out of position, you know, like that, and not having all 4 wheels on the ground, or all 8 wheels should I say, on the ground. So little tip for you guys, you can, with enough, you can actually just get, no you can't get that one over there. So no, you don't be tempted to glue that brass rod in, leave it loose, and then what you do is you push it that way, put that leg in, push it through that leg, put this leg in, and then push that one back through, and then once it's all done we can just put a drop of glue in there, hold it all in there, and job done, all nice and solid, instead of having that very, very weak joint there. So there we go. Now this filler on the top here is still not set. It's been on there about 2 hours. You can see I can still mark it with my fingernail, so I'm not going to do anything with that yet. The Mr. Surfacer here I'm not going to do anything with yet, because that's only been on there about an hour and a half, and that will still be soft. You can see the test is if you can dent it with your fingernail, then it's not gone off yet. Certain areas where it's thin obviously will have gone off, but the thicker areas won't have. So all you do is destroy your sanding sticks, so don't bother trying to sand it too early. So should we call that a day there for part 4? No, I don't think we've done enough, have we? So what we can do actually is start looking at some more of this. We need to look at starting getting some painting done as well. Now these wheels are going to need some careful masking. Now the diameter, where's my vernier gone? There it is. We're going to have to get some discs made which are sort of 3.8 millimeters diameter. Now I'm not sure what size my largest punch is. I don't think it's 3.8 anything like. No, it's not. So let me have a little think about that, and then we'll go from there. Alright, bit bitty this one, because it's all sort of, I'm trying to sort of keep busy and make a video, and while everything's sort of drying and that, you know, I can't really do much with the engines until they're dry. Can't do anything with the fuselage until this filler's sorted, so just sort of have to just bear with me for now. So I'm thinking about these wheels. Now, if you remember, I showed you in part 2, I think, about these wheels being a bit of a mess. I've also noticed that all of the ones on the left are actually off centre as well, so the wheels are a bit of a letdown. If you're going to build this into a sort of, you know, beautiful display piece, I would seriously suggest looking at some resin wheels. I mean, you can see there, if we look on that one, you can see that the actual wheel centre is sort of off centre and squashed in one side. If you look at it there, if I put it, you can see at 12 o'clock it's sort of, the wheel is down in. So they're not going to look too good whatever you do, and there's no real rim to paint to, so I thought, well, I'll have to make some sort of jig. So what I've done, I've got 2 bits of plastic tube, I've drilled through a piece of plastic card, and then got the tube sort of central over the wheel. So what I'll be able to do then is paint the tyre, you know, tyre black, well, whole wheel tyre black, put it in here, and then with the airbrush just come in and with some white and let that go off, and then another quick coat, and yeah, that should be it. Now that fits in nice and snug, so I can leave them on their own. I probably need to clean that out a bit, or sand the tyres a bit to get a bit of a more realistic shape to them. because they are a bit sort of round. And then once they're on the model, I'll give them a little flat spot on the bottom, but I like to do that afterwards so that I guarantee I've got the bottom, rather than having sort of, you know, there's nothing worse. You see, I've seen it before where people flat bottom their tyres and then they have the tyre sort of, you know, on the ground, so it's sort of just not the flat is on the bottom. So, and then on the front wheels the same, cocktail stick in there and then hold that in there and just paint it. So that's a little tip for you guys. All that is a couple of bits of tubing, sand the inside out to the right size, cut it off and then glue it on. Obviously that one is slightly too tight, so when the tyre is painted it'll be even tighter, so I can take a little burring tool like this and just open the inside out. If you haven't seen one of these before, this is a Tamiya electric handed drill. It comes in kit form. You can get them on eBay and stuff, so look them up, they're great fun to build. And the beauty of them is they're very slow, so it's not going to start melting plastic and stuff. That's better. So that's going to go in like that, and then we can just paint the wheel white and we'll have a nice demarcation then. And also, if you notice, I've got a slight chamfer on the back and a big chamfer on the front, so that you're not actually, the paint doesn't actually touch. If you had the plastic tight up against where you're painting, the paint would actually touch, and the next time you put one in, it would capillary up onto the tyre. So there's a chamfer in the back of there to stop that happening, and that's easy to do with something like this. This is a little ball cutter. You get in sort of sets and stuff. You can find them all over the place. Just go in the back and just chamfer the back of it so that when you spray through, the paint doesn't capillary onto the tyre, if you see what I mean. You're just trying to break that edge, so you're going to end up with a slightly soft edge, but you know, it's not going to worry, and if you give it a wash it'll probably hide all that anyway. So there we go. That's the tyre painting jig. And if you want to have a go at making one, you can do them on any scale, any size you like. If you want to do them that big, you could, as long as you've got the tubing and the plastic sheet and the drills. Okay, I'm not sure how long this video's been, but this is going to be the end of part 4. And what we're going to do is, we've got those wheel jigs there. This is basically all we've got left of the kit now. The box is empty, other than the canopy, the cockpit windows. So basically, yeah, clean up these. I've gone over and sanded the fuselage. I've sanded that filler there, and as I said, I've used my old coarse sanding stick here. I didn't want to use my new favourite Infini sanders on any filler or anything for fear of clogging them up. So I went around with this one over this filler first, which is a fairly coarse flat board that you can get from modelsforsale.com, and then I went over all the Mr. Surfacer with this one. This is the Flory coarse one side, fine the other, and just basically went over and took the excess of the Mr. Surfacer off. Then I went over with the 1000 Infini soft sponge, and then I went over with the 2500 Infini soft sponge, and now you can see we've got a very, very seamless, lovely fuselage seam there, top and bottom. A little bit of Mr. Surfacer there, obviously Mr. Surfacer there in those panel lines because I wanted to fill them in. And there we go. I'm just going to clean that up there around that, what I think is a skid. I'll do some research. I found some photos online which are quite handy. So there we go. There we go. Now I could just polish that out with the 2500 grit and we're good to go. And if I go over with the 4000, it'll get all glossy, but I don't want it all glossy because I want the primer to have something to bite on. So you can feel along there now, that all feels lovely, everything feels lovely. So that's going to be a really nice fuselage seam. The problem is going to come in when I decide to fit these wings, and when I decide to fit these wings, and you can see I put the masking tape on there. That was when I was sanding it earlier with the wing in place. I just wanted to protect the wing surface. But basically now we've got some filling and sanding to do around this wing joint here, but I'll do all that once the wing is actually glued on. And you can see I've got the filler in there now, which is giving it that shape. I've just got to put some more filler in here just to build this up, and then the rest of it will be done with Mr. Surfacer. So all coming together well on the fuselage there, and we've got our brass rod in there still. So these tail planes, just like the wings, we've got sprue nibs on the leading edges, and we've got some flash there on the trailing edge. So I'm going to take my 400 grit hard sander. If you remember, I said I was going to use these exclusively in this build, give them a good test, and at the moment I'm very happy with them. And I've only used the 600, the 1000, the 2500 in the sponges, and I've used the 400 and the 600 in the Matador. That's all I've used. So we'll see how we go. If I don't use anything else, then maybe that gives you a clue as to the ones you should buy, or perhaps just get the... Oh, I've used the 4000 as well, haven't I? There it is. There's the 4000 white one. Yeah, if I were you, I would get the set if you're going to be buying them. I mean, one set's £10, one set's £12, and I think this set of sponges for £12 I think is an absolute bargain. They really are quite tough. If I can just show you this one, this is a fairly soft sanding sponge as well. It's fairly new. I did have an older one. I may have got rid of it, but one of the problems with these is when you catch them on an edge, it rips chunks out of them. Whereas these seem to be fairly tough. Like if you were standing there and you caught it on that corner there, it would rip a chunk out of those. But these seem to be fairly tough. So pretty pleased with that overall. So there we go. I've got a bit of a sprue mark I can still see there. So just take that out, or a sprue nib mark, should I say. And then I'm going to get my 400 hard and just sand that seam away from there. And like I said before, we'll get the knife, we'll just go in and just put a slightly concave face on there, so that when it goes on, we know we're going to get a nice fit onto the flat surface. As you will see here, there's actually some sanding required on there because there's a bit of an edge sticking out. So I'm just going to take that edge off of there. So we should be able to now slide that in. That's the wrong one. Slide that in, and there's a lovely joint there. Bit of Mr. Surfacer in there blended in. That'll be lovely. Okay, so I'll do the same on the other one. Just take the stick on the trailing edge and just remove that flash. Go over, this is the 600 I'm using here now. Just remove these sprue nibs. And you can see I'm actually running along the length, and that's removing the glue seam, that's removing the sprue nibs, and all the time it's keeping it all nice and straight and even. If you start going like this, you might end up with a bit of a wonky edge, and you don't want a wonky edge in your life now, do you? And then I've got the 1000 grit just to follow up with. See, I caught that on that corner there and it hasn't ripped it. Whereas what I found in the past, the others, they do actually rip open. And there we go. I'm happy with that. It's looking. Just sand in there, sand in there. Use the knife actually. And there we go. That's all nicely cleaned out, and then that should fit on there beautifully like that. There we go. And it looks like we need to make sure we get that sprue nib off the inside, because they could touch each other and push each other out. There we go. Now if you notice on here, these parts were made up, and the one side was just this section here, so the trailing edge was actually moulded in with the other side. Now because they're the same, that means one side's got to have this side up and this side up on that one. So if you understand what I mean. Now this one we can see has got a sink mark in it, and also the actual demarcation line for the elevator is a lot more pronounced. So what we can either do is scribe this out and make it look more pronounced, but then that won't be in fitting with the rest of the model. So, or we can put some Mr. Surfacer in here and then go around with some alcohol afterwards and take it out. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've got my trusty bottle of Mr. Surfacer 1000 here at the ready, and then my brush, which hasn't been cleaned. You can see the bristles are all hard. Dip it in there, run it around a couple of times, and the bristles will go soft. And I've got a bristle sticking out the side there. Just get rid of that. And then I'm going to run the Mr. Surfacer and put it quite heavily into here, and it'll run down into that gap and not eradicate it, but it will just make it less pronounced, so it's more in fitting with the rest of the model. There are people who watch my channel that actually play a drinking game, and every time I say Mr. Surfacer they take a drink. Those people must be permanently drunk, because I use this stuff all the time for everything. I absolutely love the stuff. Okay, so that's gone in there now. It's probably going to need another application because it's really pulling this in. And what I'm trying to do is get it to look more like that rather than like that. And I think what I will do, get this out of the way, I don't want to get paint on them. I think what I will do is also go in the back of this one. Now, if you notice, I'm not dealing with that sink mark. That is because what I'm going to do is, after a couple of hours, I'm going to come along here with a cotton bud soaked in alcohol, and I'm going to wipe this over. I'll get it on video for you. Wipe this over so that it leaves a seam line behind. So if I starting to put Mr. Surfacer in that sink, then as soon as I do that, I'm just going to pull the Mr. Surfacer out. That needs to be sanded because we want a flat finish. And that's the thing, when you want to get yourself a nice clean line but looks like a seam, then you use the alcohol method. When you want to get yourself a totally flat edge like this area here, you don't use alcohol, you use sanding, so to get that nice and straight. And I've just noticed we've got some Mr. Surfacer in there. There we go, that's gone. So there we are, guys. Now I'll just give this brush a quick wipe, and I think then we'll call that a day for part 4, and I will see you for part 5, which I think we're going to be getting the engines finished off. We'll get the wings on, and we'll look at doing some work around that that wing seam. That's going to take a lot of work, I think, especially around this under the leading edge here. So so there we go. Wait for that to go off, and then I'll get in there with some. I'll probably have to put some more Mr. Surfacer in there, but afterwards I'll get in there with the alcohol. We'll get these engines sanded out, get the scribing sorted on them. The front of the engines, the outside of this intake is polished by the look of it. So what I'm tempted to do is actually fit the engines and everything, paint these separately, and just put them on afterwards with a dab of white glue, because they're a lovely fit. But I can paint them gloss black, give them a metal coat, get them nice and shiny, and then just plonk them on after everything else is done, because they're shiny, they don't want to be matte, so really they would be like the last thing to go on. So thanks for watching, and I will see you for part 5, and we'll get all of this together and probably get to the point where we can throw the box away. Yay! Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.